Here's what's coming up on The World Today. Americans in the state of Georgia are voting in runoff elections to determine control of the U.S. Senate. Britain enters the first day of imposed national lockdown spanning a period of 6 weeks. Plus, India set to begin export of locally made COVID-19 vaccines. A warm welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale, and we're sending warmth out today as Americans in the state of Georgia head to the polls to vote on representatives to the Senate, a big decider for which party eventually has the majority among the lawmakers. The Democrats need to win the 2 seats up for grabs to gain full control of Congress, and with it, the powers to push forward President-elect Joe Biden's agenda, while President Donald Trump needs only to win one of the seats to retain the Senate. He has told Georgians that it is the last chance to save the America they love. So far, we know at least 3 million ballots have been cast in early in-person and mail voting, mirroring a trend seen in November due to the pandemic.
To me, the Republican Party has lied too much. And now they're trying to switch back around and said that they didn't, and they did. That's what I saw in the commercials.
The ability to help shape our future is outstanding, right? I've got 2 boys, helping their future and our beliefs is great. To your point, the ads, the texts, the emails, that becomes a bit much. Even when your middle schooler starts making comments like, "This needs to get over." That's the challenge. But I understand people want to get their messages out and try to make sure everybody's aware of what they believe and what they're going to do when they get into office or stay in office, and it's good for them to do that.
Well, the VOA's Catherine Gibson is outside one of the polling stations in Atlanta, Georgia. Catherine, thanks for joining us. I know it's cold out there, being the winter season.
Right. Absolutely. Good to be here.
So how are Georgians voting at the polls today amidst this pandemic?
Well, it's important to remember that while today is election day here in Georgia, there have been early voting opportunities available for weeks here leading up to this election day. And also when you go into these polling places like the one behind me, all of the coronavirus pandemic restrictions and cautionary steps are still being taken. Everyone is wearing masks, there's hand sanitizer, they're spacing people out so that they make sure that if they're gathering in large groups, if there are lines, then people are staying safe while they cast this all-important vote.
Well, this is the state that could very well be the decider for President Trump and all of his attempts to overturn the presidential election. Tell us exactly how the polls in Georgia could either help or put the final nail on this whole saga.
Well, it's important to separate out President Trump's allegations of voter fraud in the presidential election last November, and then the voting that is going on here today in terms of the Senate runoffs. Now, there will be in the minds of some Republican voters a connection between those two, because some of them have been telling me that they don't believe that their vote will count, or that there may be some problems, some shenanigans, as they put it, that mean that they won't be included in that final vote total. Georgia state election officials, however, have gone down point by point of the president's allegations and have shown that all of those are unfounded. They do not have evidence. They have said that the vote here was correctly totaled and that Joe Biden did win this state by a little less than 12,000 votes.
Yeah, it is also important for President-elect Joe Biden as well. How confident do you think he is of the Democrats winning the Senate?
Well, the president-elect was campaigning here Monday night in Atlanta, a final call to voters to get out and vote for Jon Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock, saying that basically the entire fate of the 2 years of his presidency, the first 2 years, are going to rest on having those seats filled by Democrats, because of course then Vice President-elect Kamala Harris would be the tie-breaking vote. If even one seat is lost to the Republicans, then it's going to just be that much more difficult for Biden to get through any big picture legislative items. So in terms of the way he framed this race, he said it was all important and that Georgians held the fate of the nation in their hands today.
Well, Catherine, just before I let you go, how soon are we likely to get the results? Are we likely to, see the long wait like we did in November before we get the results?
I think you should prepare yourself for a long wait here in Georgia because of those allegations of fraud, because there have been such high early voting numbers, because interest is high here, and I think the turnout will be good today. Every Georgia state election official is going to take their time, making sure every single vote is counted, making sure every single voter is heard until they certify those results. We're hearing that they may not come until the week of January 22nd. So a little bit longer of a wait here for the 2020 election, which is still going on here in this country.
All right, then. Thanks again, Catherine, and do stay safe and warm.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be there.
Well, speaking of the coronavirus, Britons are doubling down to another 6 weeks of national lockdown announced by Prime Minister Boris Johnson yesterday. This time, citizens have been told to stay at home because of how highly contagious the new variant is and the huge risk it portends for the National Health Service. Staff are already complaining of being overwhelmed by the toll the pandemic has taken on them. From tears at the end of a long shift to sleep problems, doctors and nurses say they are finding it difficult to cope as COVID-19 infections continue to soar in the United Kingdom. The lockdown comes as the government this week has begun to roll out of the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. Well, Britain leaders are looking into options to restrict international travel following the lockdown. Cabinet Minister Michael Gove says it would be necessary to review the situation at the UK's ports and airports, while Labour leader Keir Starmer says he supports the government in instituting the lockdown, but that there is no room for error in what he says is a race against time.
We are looking at further options to restrict international travel. I talked last night to the First Ministers of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland to ensure that we can have a coordinated approach on this, and we're working together to do that. And of course, as I think people know, the Prime Minister's clear message last night was that people should not be travelling. But of course, what we do need to do is to review the situation at our ports and airports. There are, some vital reasons why people should travel, commercial reasons to make sure that we have food on our shelves and fuel for our industry. But we are looking very hard to see how we can make sure that our ports and airports are as safe as possible. The chief medical officers, the 4 chief medical officers of the United Kingdom, met and discussed yesterday the situation, and their recommendation, all 4, was that the country had to move to level 5, the highest level of alert, which meant that there was an imminent danger to the NHS of being overwhelmed unless action was taken. And so in those circumstances, we felt that the only thing that we could do was to close those primary schools which were open. Of course, it was with the heaviest of hearts because education is such an important part of any young person's life. And we wanted to keep schools open as much as possible. But the message from the chief medical officers yesterday was clear, and therefore with a heavy heart, but with clear evidence, we had to act.
Well, more on the coronavirus now, as India is set to begin exporting locally made coronavirus vaccines within a fortnight of their launch. This is in response to a report that India would ban export of vaccines it is producing to meet local demand. India makes about 60% of vaccines globally, and many countries are eagerly waiting for it to begin shipping doses. Well, here's more on this and other developments on our COVID-19 Global Update.
News of India exporting vaccines comes as the country formally approves the emergency use of 2 vaccines as it prepares to begin giving jabs this January. The country is planning one of the world's biggest inoculations, seeking to immunize about 300 million people by the month of July. The vaccines prepared for the rollout is the one developed by AstraZeneca with Oxford University and another by local firm Bharat Biotech.
In the statement, they say vaccines are a global public health good. They also say that we communicate our joint pledge to provide global access for our COVID-19 vaccines. So what does this mean? This means that neither the union government nor the vaccine manufacturers are talking of any ban on exports of vaccines.
Several cities have taken part in the dry run process aimed at monitoring the possible adverse scenarios during and after the administration of the vaccine. Elsewhere, where mass vaccinations are ongoing, France has widened its COVID-19 vaccination rollout to firefighters and aid workers aged over 50, after making a slow start in the inoculation campaign. France on Monday had accelerated its COVID-19 vaccination of medical staff in hospitals after being criticized for a slow start in one of the most vaccine-skeptical countries in the world. And in Belgium, the country has started a large-scale rollout of its COVID vaccination program in nursing homes after an initial test conducted a week earlier in 4 locations on 700 elderly people. Belgium's average number of cases per day, which peaked at 22,000 in late October, was 1,581 on Tuesday, a 14% drop from a week earlier. Hospital admissions and fatalities are also declining. Australia's most populous state has reported a small one-day rise in locally acquired COVID-19 cases as authorities warn of a possible spread to regional areas. New South Wales says it has detected 4 cases of COVID-19 in the past 24 hours. On Monday, it reported 0 new local infections, the first time the state reported no new infections since December 15th. And finally, the Zimbabwean government has put the country under a harder lockdown for 30 days, starting today, as it tries to curb rising COVID-19 infections. All public gatherings, except funerals, have been suspended, while an overnight curfew that previously began at 10 p.m. now comes into effect from 6 p.m. local time.
Your main issue and how you must...
Still ahead on the program. Well, it's the start of the 2021 Harbin International Ice and Snow Festival. We'll show you how it's going in a moment. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the program. Gulf Arab leaders have signed an agreement on solidarity and stability during a summit aimed at ending an embargo against Qatar by its neighbors. Leaders have not made public the contents of the document, but the reason for the deal stems from when Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain and Egypt cut ties with Qatar in 2017, accusing it of supporting terrorism. Qatar denies the accusation and has rejected conditions for ending a partial blockade, including closing the Doha-based Al Jazeera broadcast network. Kuwait and US mediators have stepped up efforts to end the standoff. In other news, the South Korean government is planning to send a delegation to Iran to try to negotiate the release of an oil tanker seized by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards on Monday. Iran says the ship reportedly violated pollution rules, but operators denied the allegation. The incident comes amid tensions over Iranian funds frozen in South Korean banks because of U.S. sanctions. South Korea's defense ministry says a destroyer carrying an anti-piracy unit was in waters close to the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow shipping route in the Gulf region close to where the tanker was seized, to ensure the safety of South South Korean nationals. The warship has been in waters off Somalia since late last year to counter piracy attacks in the Gulf of Aden and the Strait of Hormuz. It's been a harrowing day for people in Bolivia's Sucre city, where at least 4 people have died in flash floods, which occurred following a heavy hailstorm, which lasted about half an hour, causing some of the city's steep streets to become fast-flowing waters. Water rushed down the street, dragging along cars, buses and market stalls. The worst affected area was around the city's largest farmers market, where drains were blocked by rubbish, making the flooding worse. Officials say 3 children and 3 adults are still missing and 7 had been injured. At least 10 vehicles were swept away in the flash floods. Many merchants lost all their goods and several people were treated in hospital for hypothermia. The United Nations Migration Agency is becoming very concerned about migrants in Bosnia and Herzegovina sleeping outside in below 0 temperatures amid delays and indecision over their relocation. Police and the migrants say hundreds of migrants from Africa, Asia and the Middle East were left stranded in the open air in Camp Lipa last week when an attempt to relocate them to another site in Bosnia after fire wrecked their temporary camp failed. Fire destroyed Camp Lipa near the town of Bihać in western Bosnia last week. The migrants were supposed to be transferred to the town of Radina, about 320 kilometers away in central Bosnia. They were initially put onto buses and waited in cold winter weather for more than a day to be taken to another place. However, there was no final agreement on where they should go. Incessant rain has led to drops in temperature, battering migrants who were sleeping outside. Now, Africa's first drone academy is opened in Malawi, where students are learning how to make and fly drones, collect and analyze data. The institute builds on the work of a pilot scheme launched in 2017 with the support of the UN Children's Fund, UNICEF, in which drones have been used to deliver medical supplies, monitor crops and map cholera outbreaks.
For Ethiopian aeronautical engineer Lydia Elias, building and piloting a drone to support humanitarian and development projects on the continent for her birth was a lifelong dream. In 2020, as a student at Africa's first drone academy, she has made it come true.
After me learning, I try to teach my people I also have an aerospace club, so I'm trying to transfer this knowledge to the students that are fellows in my country.
The institute is in Malawi and was built on the work of a pilot scheme launched in 2017 with the support of the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, in which drones have been used to deliver medical supplies, monitor crops and map cholera outbreaks. Elias and 25 others from across Africa were the first batch of students at the academy, which opened outside the capital, Lilongwe. They learn how to make and fly drones, collect and analyze data over a 12-week course. Other students shared Elias's excitement.
For a short time that I've been here, I've been able to create this drone because this drone is the drone which I made from my own ends through the use of provided aided materials. We provided all these materials and how to go about. Then I followed all the procedures until I make this drone.
The academy had planned to train 150 students to build and pilot drones in 2021.
So this is a very significant step to help young people obtain 21st century skills. This decade, which has just started, is going to be digital. And to help young people improve their skills, learn about digital technology, learn about drones, will be an incredible step forward, not only for Malawi, but for many other African countries as well.
Funding from UNICEF partners has provided for tuition to the first cohort of 26 students. It is expected that by 2022, the Academy will run a tuition-free 2-year master's degree program in drone technology.
And as we end the program, the 2021 Harbin International Ice and Snow event officially kicked off today in Harbin City in northeast China, helping to boost the development of the local ice-snow economy. This year, Harbin will combine ice and snow events with sports, music and culture to attract more tourists to participate in the activities, while also providing a new experience. Meanwhile, the Harbin Government and China Tourism Academy officially released the China Ice and Snow Tourism Development Report 2021 and Harbin Ice and Snow Tourism Report 2021 on Tuesday. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Tenyola Shuboale. Stay safe.